For many of you that are starting your health and fat loss expedition, you might be pulling your hair out and wondering why you can't stick to your food plan, your nutrition plan, or your exercise plan. And that's where you start blaming yourself. Maybe you're blaming yourself because there's a lack of motivation. Maybe you're blaming yourself for not having willpower. Or maybe you're just blaming yourself for not having discipline like everyone else out there who are potentially sticking to their nutrition plan or their exercise plan on their health and fat loss expedition. So if it's not anything that I've just mentioned, then what can it be? What can the cause be of you not sticking to the plan? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to discuss so that I can help you figure it out so that you can move forward and see progress on your health and fat loss expedition. Welcome to this episode of the Mandy Meyer podcast. As per usual, this is a podcast where we chat all about your health and fat loss goals, your health and fat loss expedition, how you can achieve those goals on that fat loss expedition, and how you can see progress in all areas whilst you are expeditioning forward. Expeditioning, is that even a word? Even me, I don't know. So let's get into it. I'm going to chat about 3 things that matter way more than what you actually think when it comes to your health and fat loss expedition. You see, the 2 things that most people put right on top of the priority list, and maybe what you are doing too, is your food choices, so your nutritional plan, as well as your exercises, movement, your exercise plan. And that is all that you focus on. Now, don't get me wrong. Food and exercise are fundamental to your progress on your health and fat loss expedition. But you need to ask yourself that question, why are you struggling to stick to those 2 things? Why are you struggling to stick to the plan when it comes to making smarter food or calorie choices and moving a little bit more on a consistent basis? Is it because you are not motivated? Is it because you are lacking self-control? Is it because you are not disciplined enough? Or is it maybe number 1, your mindset, number 2, your vocab, and number 3, your environment? So as I mentioned, food and movement, fundamental when it comes to fat loss. There is no denying that. But if you cannot stick to the plan consistently, when it comes to your food choices and your exercise, then your progress might be slightly dismal. And that's why I want to touch on those 3 things, your mindset, your vocab, and your environment. Of course, there's many other influencing factors that play a role as to whether you can or cannot stick to your plan consistently. But in today's episode of this podcast, those are the 3 things that I want to chat about. Number 1, your mindset is fundamental. You cannot come into this health and fat loss expedition wanting to make it sustainable, but then keep telling yourself that you're going to fail. Or you keep asking yourself what's going to be different this time because you usually fail at the 2-week mark. You can't come into this health and fat loss expedition if you want to make it sustainable, if you don't believe in yourself, if you are not confident within your abilities to achieve things. Your mindset is so important when you have the option of choosing between what you can't control or what you can control. Most people will focus on things that they can't control. So you might focus on the things that you haven't done, or you might focus on the past and the things that have gone wrong. And because your fixation is in the past or on things that you can't control, that is then standing in the way of you focusing on the things that are within your control. If you're constantly telling yourself that it's too difficult to do X, Y, or Z, or you're constantly telling yourself, but you can't do X, Y, and Z, realistically, let's be real with one another here. What are your chances of actually doing that? You are running yourself down even before you give yourself the time to shine. Essentially, what you are doing is, even before you start, you are thinking yourself into failing. Your mindset has to be a mindset of a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. You see, when you have a fixed mindset, you're not willing to change. You're not willing to do the hard work. You're constantly looking where you're currently at and why you can't do things. When you have a growth mindset or you start practicing a growth mindset, that's where you're willing to change. That's where you're willing to get out of your comfort zone. That is where you're willing to do the difficult things. And I'm not even at the point of talking about executing those things. I'm talking about the initial stages where you're thinking about it. That is where your mindset plays a major role. Like I said, if you're constantly thinking about why you can't do something, and I know many of you are like, oh, but no, that's not possible. I get hundreds of DMs on a consistent basis where people start the DMs by saying, oh, but Mandy, I can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, but what can you do? We need to be focusing on what you can do. Shift your mindset to what can you do and what changes can you make? And that's why I say your mindset is super important when it comes to your health and fat loss expedition and the progress therein. Number 2, your vocab matters far more than what you think. So many times I see people saying, oh, I will try. Or you'll use words like, I hope I can get it done today. Emphasis on hope. Or another famous sentence is, I'll see what today has in store and then maybe I'll work on those non-negotiables. Or let's see what happens. When you're using words like this, you're giving yourself a lot of wiggle room. Essentially what I mean by that is you're giving yourself the option to tap out. Now I know it sounds silly because it's just words, but at the end of the day, those words relate back to what I mentioned about your mindset. If you are serious about your health and fat loss expedition, you are going to commit. You are going to commit to giving it your best every single day. Now, your best every single day can look different. But just changing a word from I'm going to try get 5,000 steps today to I am going to smash 5,000 steps per day, you removing that option for you to tap out. Because at the end of the day, when you get 3,000 steps, you will say, oh, I tried. Whereas if you committed to getting 5,000 steps, what most likely will happen is you will push a little bit harder to get those 5,000 steps because you committed to doing it. And we're not going to hope for the best. You're not going to hope for the best. You are going to give it your best. So I want you to have a look at the words that you use when it comes to your daily non-negotiables, or even when it comes to the foods that you are eating, or just any vocab that you're using around your health and fat loss expedition. There are so many words that are used that can actually be perceived as negative without you even knowing it. Again, I use the word try. If you tell yourself you're going to try and do something, it could stem back to that mindset of you not actually believing in yourself. If you believed in yourself, commit to it. Commit to doing something. Commit to a target and go out there and give it your absolute best. And then number 3, your environment. This plays such a massive role in your actions, in your food choices, and also within your self-control. Let's say, for example, your environment, your kitchen, your cupboards have got a huge amount of snacks in or fun foods in them. Or there's a load of fun foods around you within your kitchen. It just makes the temptation so much more. It makes it a lot more difficult to say no because you're constantly surrounded by these things. You know it's in that cupboard. Your thoughts are going to be in that cupboard the entire time. Maybe, just maybe, it is time to do an audit of your environment. Is it your environment that is so tempting that it means you struggle with your self-control or with your food choices? Your environment could even be something like the programs that you watch. Maybe, for example, you watch the news or you listen to the news. Maybe that makes you emotional. Maybe it triggers you. What happens then? Maybe then you turn to those foods that are in the snack cupboard that are tempting you. You need to figure out what in your environment triggers you. What in your environment is tempting. Now, tempting doesn't necessarily mean just food. There could be a huge amount of peer pressure from your social environment that plays a major role in you saying no. And I can't sit here and tell you exactly what it is. You know what it is. Deep down inside, you know exactly what triggers you within your environment. And only you can clean that environment up. I don't want you to take these things lightly. Your mindset, your vocab, and your environment, they play a massive role in how you move forward. They play a massive role in the decisions that you make. Those 3 things ultimately are going to play a role in dictating your consistency within your nutritional choices as well as within your exercise. What I would suggest that you do right after you've listened to this podcast or watched this video is get a pen and a piece of paper and write down a couple of things that you feel is holding you back from a mindset perspective. Write down a couple of words that you use that you feel you could change. And then also have a look at your environment, from your environment at home, your social environment, any environment, and have a look at a couple of triggers and ask yourself how you can potentially change the environment slightly to have less triggers or temptations. Here's the thing, stop telling yourself that you can't do something. Because I can tell you now, if you commit to doing something, you will be able to do it. Stop giving yourself the option to tap out. Commit, commit, commit. And again, I will say this, your best can look different every day. Your commitment can look different every day, depending what the day throws at you. But you have to commit. And you have to believe that you can do it. Yes, there's always going to be a little bit of self-doubt. Yes, there's always going to be that little bit of fear of failure. But a lot of that is brought about by you, your mindset, and your vocab. And if you can change those things along with your environment or make small tweaks and changes within your environment, I can tell you now that you will see a change within your consistency, within your nutrition and exercise plan. But again, the same with any of these podcast episodes that I make or these video episodes of the podcast that I make. You can either sit there and listen to it and let it go in the one ear and out the other ear, or you can take action. And again, that comes down to a mindset thing. And I can tell you now that action takers, they are the ones that see progress. They are the ones that become successful in what they are doing. Not because they were scared of failing, but because they didn't give themselves the option to tap out and they believed that they could do it. So just start believing that you can do it and stop tapping out when it gets difficult. YouTube's going to suggest this video for you to watch. If you're serious about taking action, go ahead and watch it. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you like I usually do. Keep smiling, keep laughing, and keep being kind to one another. Much love. Your friend who knows just how important a strong mindset is, Mandy.